Some would call this Black history, but I feel that when we call it Black history, we sometimes have a tendency to give our own history a little bit of a disservice because it doesn't talk about the impact that a great people had on the Americas. And also, too, when we call it Black history, there are those that may not want to associate or accept the information being told. When we call it American history, it makes it all encompassing. The exhibit is the diaspora's journey from Africa to present day through a series of storyboards and actual artifacts. It's broken into 4 vignettes. First being Mother Africa, second being chattel slavery, third being Jim Crow, and the fourth being Still We Rise. And the exhibit is predominantly geared towards Afro-American children and young adults, predominantly Afro-American males. We want to start teaching them about their history from an identity standpoint. And we start with Africa because one of the things I believe that's so important is we start with our origin. And we're Africans. We're brought from Africa against our will. So one of the first boards I use to teach with is a board here by Imhotep. I start with this symbol. This is a very common symbol that's shown around the United States. And it usually represents medicine, pharmacy, or something to do with the medical field. But very seldom they talk about the origin of the symbol. It actually represents Imhotep, who was a famous non-royal person in the country of Egypt. And more importantly, he was the first physician and the first architect in the world. He was known for developing the first step pyramid. But another important piece, if you understand Greek mythology, there's a name called Hippocrates, or the Hippocratic Oath, and most physicians know this. But the important thing about Hippocrates, as stated right here, 2,200 years before Hippocrates, who's known as the father of Western medicine, this guy exists. If you study world history, you'll understand that Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. And one of the first things he did, he took the libraries out of Egypt and took them back to Rome. So you have Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, all those famous people that we know about, and Hippocrates that have benefited at the expense of people from Africa. So the first piece of identity we talk about is Egypt, Imhotep. This is who we are. And we just spoke about Africa as a continent, and we talked about value. We talked about Imhotep. We talked about the fact that his symbol represented medicine. We talked about him being the first architect and the first physician in the world. We talked about Hippocrates in regards to getting a lot of the credit being named the father of Western medicine. So, as a people, we were stolen from our land and we're brought to Americas on ships. And what I have here is an actual image of a slave ship. And what's important about the slave ship is that here we laid for a month at a time. Within 18 inches, we ate, we slept, we defecated, we urinated, we menstruated, we vomited, and we died within 18 inches. But very important, because of the ones that lived, I am here. These are my ancestors. We're now going to the next phase, which is Jim Crow, which I call the section where we were free on paper only. And Jim Crow was a caste system. I'll just read this to you. It says, Jim Crow is the name of a racial caste system which operated primarily but exclusively in southern and border states. And so basically what Jim Crow did, it established a separate but equal mentality from whites to blacks based on feelings and beliefs. Billie Holiday did a very famous song called Strange Fruit. And as history would tell us, she had heard about the lyrics of this song from a poem of a Jewish gentleman. She decided to put words to it. And so here are the actual words to the song of Strange Fruit. And it represents Africans that were hung unnecessarily and without just cause in the South. Panels here and here represent actual documented lynchings per state. You look at Louisiana, you look at the depth of the sheet of paper, it goes on 2 sheets of paper. Here's Oregon, and we're here in Seattle, Washington. It's 2 hours away. And these are documented lynchings. I say documented lynching because I'm almost positive that there were lynchings that took place in the various amounts of states that went undetected, unreported, and people came up missing. So these are the ones that we know for a fact were documented. Probably the most important section of the American History exhibit is a section on African American inventors and inventions. And it speaks to the perseverance of a great people. The question becomes, did you know that African Americans were very instrumental in the technology of the cell phone? Did you know that African Americans invented the bandage? The important thing about Lewis Latimer, now Thomas Edison was known for inventing the light bulb. One thing that Lewis Latimer did, he invented the filament on the inside, and the filament allowed the light bulb to stay brighter longer. He wound up selling his invention to GE. I believe one of the biggest challenges for our males is the lack of identity and self-worth. So when we start with Mother Africa, we talk about value as it relates to one of the strongest peoples on the face of the earth. To me, the most important section is the Still We Rise section, which speaks to perseverance of our people. So if there's nothing else when the teens and young adults leave, there's 2 things I want them to know is, in Mother Africa, that's who you are. That's what you stand for, and this is what you're capable of becoming. And slavery and Jim Crow had 2 things in mind, keeping you from who you are and what you're capable of becoming.
I have books about inventors, and I've seen a lot of different, you hear about the stoplight,
Gary Morris.
But here
you
got the tools, you got all these little things here that we see every day. And these are things that young people can really look at and relate to.
Yes. I'm glad you said that because this is actually made to be a hands-on exhibit. So this is where it comes in with kindergartners, 1st and 2nd grades. Even though in their kindergarten, 1st grade, they may not be able to make a connection that African Americans invented these things, they can make a connection to a relationship with an item that they're familiar with. And we know that the subconscious is always being challenged. So when a child comes up here, 1 or 2 years old, pick this up, and says ice cream. And he picks this up and he says, "Owie, we're on the right track." So the goal is maybe not this year or the next year, as we continue to feed him the correct information, he'll start making connection that he too can invent some of these things.